Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Thiesel, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show, where truth matters. Thank you for allowing us to come into your home, and we are so proud to be part of your world. We're Fox News affiliates. You can also find us on television. We are syndicated on Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget the podcast on thenewscasters.com. Got a very special friend with me right now, and I'm so glad he's running for office. You're the kind of guy we need. He is an author and a speaker, and he's attorney Don Brown. Hey, Don, how are things going out on the campaign trail?
Good afternoon, Donna. I've been on the road a lot, meeting a lot of great conservatives and Republicans around North Carolina, and I can tell you that the Trump revolution is still very much burning and on fire. And so we got to take the torch forward from here and make sure that the great victory that we were given in November, and then with the president being sworn in January, moves forward, and not just for the next 4 years, but for the next 40 years and beyond. So that's our goal at this point, and I'm optimistic that we can see it happen. And thanks to folks like you, to honest people in the media, we're able to get the truth out, and I appreciate you and always have.
Well, appreciate you too. I wanted to ask you a question because, sometimes we just get, well, it's the same old thing. We're in the little box. Trump won. We're okay. Do we need to keep the fight going? I mean, we can't just sit back and relax, can we?
It's I gave a quote the other day on the campaign trail from Winston Churchill, and the British they'd been bombed by the Germans, and our Marine Corps and Navy won a couple of battles. But British needed to win. They finally won in Africa at a place called El Alamein, and everybody was happy, exuberant. And Churchill knew that it's just starting. And he made a comment. He said, "This is not the beginning. It's not the beginning of the end, but it might just be the end of the beginning." In other words, Trump's victory has stopped the bleeding and turned the ship around. But we have got a long war that's going to be going forward, not just for the 4 years of the Trump administration, but as I said earlier, for the next 40 years and beyond. And the worst thing that conservatives and the America First patriots can do is to rest on the laurels and get fat and get happy and smile. And there's nothing wrong with us being grateful and happy for a lot of the good things that are happening, because it's been a long time coming. But at the same time, the question is, with this victory we've been given, with this gift, what are we going to do with it? And we need to double down now more than ever, recognize that the enemy speaks English within us. So we're dealing with English-speaking communists, and we need to spread the truth of the U.S. Constitution, of freedom, of free enterprise, of free markets, and of America first. And that's the message Americans want to hear, and it makes most common sense. And there's no reason to be afraid or shy. If anything, that the president's victory has shown is that it's okay and it's cool to be America first again. And we need to embrace that and wipe the enemy out politically, and march forward in the way that the founding fathers envisioned that we would and dreamed that we would.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something you had said a few weeks ago, and this is before President Trump actually came into the office. He had won the presidency race, and so he was about to come in, and I said, well, it's going to take him a long time, won't it, to kind of turn things around? And I remember you saying, which has actually worked out exactly like you said, well, no, Trump style. Because Trump is a businessman, right? Like you're a businessman running for office. So Trump is a businessman. He's going to think about things the business way. If you have a business, I've had a business in trouble before. I think everybody has. But you have to catch it. You can't let it keep running the same old way. If you don't change the ways, you're going to lose your business. Right. So he's running it on a business platform. Okay, you get rid of people who aren't working. You get rid of people who aren't doing the job. If they're not following your idea, they need to go. They need to get out, because it's going to be nothing but a cancer on your business. We've had this huge cancer in the government for decades, and he's getting rid of that cancer. You were right. You said, well, Trump style, it won't be as long as I was thinking.
Well, he was organized, and he had a game plan ready to execute. It's kind of like George S. Patton once said that an imperfect plan violently and recklessly executed is better than a perfect plan that sits on the shelf and never gets executed. And so, if there was a blessing from the time that he was out of office during those 4 years, he certainly planned for this and was ready to hit the ball rolling from day one. But the president understands, like any good businessman, that you've got a failing business, you got to stop the bleeding. Or if you've had EMT personnel and first responders when they get to the scene of an accident, you got to stop the bleeding before you can save the body. And what we've seen in these 100 days or so is an effort just to do that. Got a lot of work to do, but the efficiency under which this administration has moved is beyond amazing. It's like nothing we've ever seen in our lifetimes.
We have a lot of new folks watching the show. So let's dig in a little bit about your background. I wanted to thank you for your military service. And so let's just start there. What did you do to get to the place you're at right now?
Well, you wonder how you wound up where you are. And I ordinarily don't like talking about myself, but I was an ex-Naval JAG officer and served in a various number of capacities, handled a major F-14 crash that went down in San Diego, which would lead later to me as when I got out of the JAG Corps, investigating the shoot down of Extortion 17, which was the largest loss of life in the Afghan war, including 17 members of SEAL Team 6. Things just kind of lead one place to the other. I'd served in the Pentagon as an action officer for the Secretary of the Navy and the Judge Advocate General, and was able to get a non-resident degree from the Naval War College. So I've been in and around military a good portion of my life, for the last, 30 some years, 35, 40 years, even after going off active duty, and wound up writing 16 books that have been published. 15 are about the military one way or the other, and some are fiction, some are nonfiction. So one thing sort of led to another, and got involved in some, military justice issues, particularly rules of engagement during the Obama years in Afghanistan. Obama and later Biden would set rules of engagement to favor the Taliban over our own forces. And so got to know Pete Hegseth, who is currently our great Secretary of Defense, and he and I worked together on some cases, and one in particular involving a young man named Flint Lawrence, who had been an 82nd Airborne paratrooper, who was prosecuted under Obama's rules of engagement, sent to Leavenworth Prison, military prison, for 20 years. Pete Hegseth and I worked very hard together, and I've got to give Pete all the credit. He opened the door for this to happen, but we were able to finally, by the grace of God, persuade President Trump to pardon him. Later, after January 6th, I became involved in working with and defending a number of our J6 patriots. And I say patriots because most simply were expressing their right to petition the government for redress of grievances, as the First Amendment allows, and to speak again and to speak out, freedom of speech. Very, very few damaged anybody or hurt anything, and the ones who did, we don't know. But I got involved in representing some of those folks. I represented one young man in front of Judge Tanya Chutkan, who President Trump was brought before with Jack Smith's kangaroo court prosecution. President pardoned him. I'm one of the very, very few lawyers in the country. I have to pinch myself when I think about this, but has had not one but two pardons from the President of the United States, Donald Trump. And it's nothing I did. It's just being in the right place at the right time and just trying to be faithful to fight for justice and what's right. And so here we are. We're challenging Senator Thom Tillis for the Republican nomination in North Carolina, and I believe we're going to win this race.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. What is some of the chatter you're hearing out there from people? I know some of my friends I've spoken with who are in your area are tickled that you're running.
Well, I appreciate it. There's been tremendous on-the-ground enthusiasm. Of course, we're outgunned and outspent right now. But, Senator Tillis, his problem is he flip-flops and flop-flips and has gone against the president in too many crucial areas for too many times. In 2017, for example, 2018, he voted to give legal protection to Robert Mueller. Legal protection to Robert Mueller, the kangaroo court prosecutor who waged war against the Trump administration under this false Russia hoax claim and destroyed the lives of many. Mueller was, in my opinion, unconstitutionally appointed, just like Jack Smith was. There was no appointments. There was no presidential appointment as was supposed to be, and the independent counsel statute expired. But Tillis supported that guy. Then in 2019, when President Trump was going to propose an emergency at the border, Tillis writes an op-ed in the Washington Post opposing that. He's been soft on immigration, soft on the border wall, HB1 visa in favor of all that. Then moving into this administration, Tillis promised that he would support all the president's nominees coming out of the committee. My friend Pete Hegseth comes out of the Armed Services Committee as Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense. At that point, Tillis goes and he finds Pete's sister-in-law, and he has her sign an affidavit actively trying to torpedo Pete Hegseth's nomination, When he cannot get enough support from Collins and Murkowski and a couple of the other rhinos, he finally backed down. Now he's fighting the president on tariffs. He wants the Congress to pass legislation to take away the president's ability to put tariffs on nations like China and others who frankly have indeed screwed us over the years. And so he's taken one too many shots at the president. And North Carolina Republicans are just extremely frustrated. We're going to send an America First senator back to Washington, D.C., who will have the president's back for the next 2 years when he's in office and the 4 years beyond that. This is an opportunity. This senatorial race is an opportunity for North Carolina and North Carolina Republicans to send a strong message that the flaming fire of America First is not going to be extinguished at the end of the Trump administration like they hope. They're trying to ride the clock out. They're going to have to think twice, because we're going to come out of the gate shooting like a cannon, and we're going to take this America First movement off into the next century and rebuild our country, and nothing's going to stop us, Donna.
Some of the chatter I'm hearing is from my son and daughter-in-law. And, they live in the Creedmoor-Raleigh area. Creedmoor, North Carolina. It's the mule capital of the world.
Yeah, sure. Benson, isn't it? Is it Benson? Or what is the mule capital? I know we've got it here in North Carolina.
The mule capital is Creedmoor, North Carolina.
Creedmoor.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's it. Well, my son would live there. That would be a fitting place for him. But anyway, he is so upset with Thom Tillis. I mean, he and my daughter, they're very political, by the way, my son and daughter-in-law. And so he says, this guy can't come back in. He just can't. He has done nothing he said he would do. I mean, absolutely nothing. And I said, well, what are other people in North, because I've done a little homework for you. I said, well, what about the other people in North Carolina? What are they saying? He said, they're all fed up with him. He said, I have not found a supporter for this guy.
Well, and the again, I've been in a dozen counties in the last couple of weeks, and the level of absolute rage against this guy from North Carolina Republicans is off the charts. Hillis has hired this fancy, strategist named Shoemaker, and they've been sending out all kinds of letters trying to say Tillis is pro-Trump and all this kind of stuff. They're trying to do damage control. But I'm telling you, there is an emotional averment to this guy, and it is something that is going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, for them to overcome, Donna.
No, I don't see they can. I mean, this guy needs to be on the Democrat ticket for sure. And I'm just being truthful about it. And people want truth. They want truth. I mean, honesty. And I'm just going to tell you, a lot of people are like me. So many people said, "Oh, Trump is just rude. Trump is, I just never saw him that way." I shared with you, my dad is a lot like Trump. And so, I mean, to me, it was just like my dad talking to his employees. I mean, he wanted the job done right. And if you couldn't do it right, out you went. I mean, he didn't see any point in wasting time with people who wouldn't work and who were not on the team. That was another thing, team spirit. You got to have that. Well,
you do. And for whatever reason, Tillis has turned his guns against Trump and stabbed him in the back on multiple occasions. And, it's interesting because, you're in South Carolina now, Donna,
God's country.
And Lindsey Graham philosophically is very much like Trump. He's more likable than Trump. Excuse me. Let me rephrase. Lindsey Graham is very much like Tillis. He's more likable.
There you go, because nobody here likes him.
Right. But when Lindsey Graham tried to run against Trump in South Carolina, you saw what happened. Trump destroyed him. When Nikki Haley tried to run against Trump in South Carolina, Trump destroyed her. When Ron DeSantis, who's been an excellent governor, tried to run against Trump in Florida, Trump destroyed him. If Tillis thinks for 1 second, just because he's the elected sitting senator in North Carolina, that North Carolinians are going to support him in any way, shape, or form over the president of the United States, he's got another thought coming. This president has an ability, as we said before, to connect with the average working man and woman like no president we have ever seen. And I think it goes back probably, yes, he was born wealthy, but at the same time, he grew up in a construction family. He's been out on the front lines. He's been with the steel workers and the welders and the carpenters and the plumbers and the electricians on his projects. And I think he has a true heart for the working man. And I think it comes across, and it's not going to be broken. So Tillis is really miscalculating. I think he's probably listening to some pollster and trying to tack to the center, but it's just a losing formula. And your son is correct. Tell your son, your daughter, we need their help in Wake County, especially. So You tell him we're going to need him on the Don Brown team here in a week or two, and the sooner the better. But I appreciate his comments, and his comments are spot on.
Oh, and then he's all in it. I'm just telling you. You know, I was watching a video once. I think I sent it to you. This is probably a couple of years ago. And this was President Trump when Biden stole the election. Yeah, I'm still hammering on that. He stole it. Yep. But anyway, there's no way that freak should have been president of the United States for 4 years. But anyway, so Trump, they were coming at him, you know, with these lawsuits and all those things. So Trump just goes by one of the police departments in New York City. And I'm telling you, it's nothing like the news media said. I'm talking about this was raw video right here. It hadn't been tampered with. I mean, you know, you didn't see sound bites. So he was just walking through, and those cops were just, I mean, they were thanking him for being there. And then they said, "You going to run again? Are you going to run again?" Well, he wouldn't answer that. And then one cop actually spoke out and said, "Maybe you could be mayor here in New York." They hate the mayor there, you know. And so, I mean, it's just once somebody sees through a sham, once they see through that, they're not going to vote for him. But once they get a true patriot running for office, and you are one, Donna, and I say this behind your back, not just in front of you, okay? Once a true patriot starts running for office and people find out this person's a true patriot, like you are, Don, I mean, that's what people are looking for. And I'm noticing the younger crowd. So I'm using my son for info, okay? And I said, "Well, tell me, son, what about the young people? Have we lost that generation?" He said, "No." He said, "We lost one generation. Their parents were goofy." But he said, "The kids that are coming up behind this generation are smart." And he said, "I'm not seeing the laziness." And he said, they love Trump. He said, he goes on, even in Raleigh, North Carolina, okay, they go to Raleigh, and he sees people walking all over the place with Trump caps, young people, Trump cap shirts, the whole, and I said, "In Raleigh?" I thought that was like, and he said, no, not now.
You know, it's funny, Don. I was speaking in Orange County, which is where Chapel Hill is located. This is last Saturday, and I was speaking to the 4th North Carolina Republican district, and probably your son's district. Anyway, there were 4 or 5 counties there, 5 or 6 counties represented, including Durham County, where they were having. This is in Hillsborough, the county seat, in the government center, and Durham County was doing a gun raffle over in the corner of the room. And I said, "This is a great thing to be here in Orange County, the most liberal county in the state, and see them do a gun raffle." And I said, "Durham County, you can take that gun raffle and take it down to Henderson Street and Franklin Street and downtown Chapel Hill and watch the liberals' heads explode," you know. So that got a pretty good chuckle. But truly, to a larger point you're making, we are seeing, we're seeing people being bolder. And just like, you know, wearing these MAGA hats and Trump caps in Raleigh, Wake County, one of the big, now unfortunately liberal counties of the state, people are becoming bolder, and I think it's a great sign. The left used to use words and like Bobby Kennedy would say, ad hominem attacks against us to try to shut us up. People aren't buying that anymore, and it's really, really frustrating to them. But it's a great thing because we're the ones who need to be bold against them and make them worry about us, not the other way around.
Well, I think other countries are worrying about us now. You know, the tariffs, I think, was a wise thing to do. Hindsight, I didn't know. But I think that's going to do it. I really do.
And I agree with you. Listen, Donna, here's the thing about it. We talked about, the president's 3-hour interview with Elon Musk when he goes from one topic to another, talking about 90 rhubarb concrete for nuclear reactors, and talking about engineering and construction stuff, talking about geopolitical politics, talking about military affairs, talking about tariffs. And the president pointed out that during the McKinley administration at the turn of the century, when we were only using tariffs, the nation was making so much money off tariffs. They had to have an administration to figure out how to spend the money. And if you stop and think about it, during the greatest industrial, and we're taught to, and I was taught not to like tariffs, and nobody likes any type of a tax. But here's the thing about it: from 1880 until 1913, when the 16th Amendment was passed and the first Income Tax Act was passed, during the period of the United States' greatest industrial explosion, that laid the groundwork later for winning 2 world wars. The industrial explosion was so great. There was zero income tax and only tariffs. Mm-hmm. And so zero income tax. Now think about that. Let's come back to that in a second. Somebody texted me the other day and said they saw a video of the great Ronald Reagan saying they did not like tariffs. Well, I mean, nobody likes a tariff in and of itself. The issue is how is the tariff being used and what's the purpose of it? And I responded to that friend, listen, Ronald Reagan, when he made that comment, that was before NAFTA. And that was before we gave China most favored nation status, before we entered the WTO, all done under the Clinton administration. Mm-hmm. I was speaking, you lived in North Carolina. I was speaking in Cabarrus County a couple of weeks ago, and I asked a question. Cabarrus County, where's our textile industry? Gone with a wind. I was in Winston-Salem. We're, building so much furniture. North Carolina's the furniture capital of the world. High Point, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and West. Where's the furniture? Where's our furniture industry? Gone with the wind. Tucker had an economist on the other night who pointed out that the United States invented the microchip. Now we make only 8% of them. So tariffs are designed to protect American industry. You think about it. Could we win World War II now? When we won World War II, we had the greatest industrial base in the world. We flushed it off to China and Vietnam and Cambodia and Indonesia, and you just think of it, Laos, wherever, and for cheap labor, and flushed American industry into Mexico right out the window. So the tariffs are designed to save not just American jobs but American industry. But let me take it a step further. You and I have talked about Governor Huckabee's flat tax. His fair tax proposal, not flat tax, fair tax, crucial difference, which would involve ending the income tax. One of the things I'm running on is I've said this and I'll say it now. If elected to the U.S. Senate, I will wage war against the Internal Revenue Service. In other words, just as the Department of quote unquote education has to be eliminated, the Internal Revenue Service must be eliminated. And beyond that, the income tax system must be eliminated, period, gone. DOGE has shown us that one of the things it's shown us is that the deep state of the federal government is a criminal enterprise. And it was enabled because of the income tax system, Donna. Just get rid of it and send the government down. We'll do just fine on tariffs. And if we need a national sales tax, we need anything to supplement the income tax or to substitute for it, you can go to this fair tax that the governor's talking about. But get rid of the income tax. Think about if you eliminated the corporate income tax, how quickly American business would flow back into this country. It would take care of our manufacturing problem. It would take care of us losing jobs. It would flow so much money into this country that it would be an absolute bonanza. You see, the income tax system has handcuffed us to the point that it's allowed government to grow and grow and grow and grow. And as government has grown, our industry has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. We've got to bring it to an end.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, in little Fort Payne, Alabama, they were the sock capital of the world.
Yeah, right.
Well, guess what? Clinton comes in and all that stuff goes away. Now it's almost a ghost town. I mean, it's pathetic because you could travel through Fort Payne, Alabama, and it was hopping. I mean, that place was growing. There were little sock mills all over the place. A lot of them were cottage businesses. Right. I mean, they were just making socks like crazy. You wouldn't think that many people in the world wore that many socks, but they did. And it's like overnight.
Gone.
It went away.
Gone with the wind because of idiotic trade practices, primarily pushed by the Democrats in the Clinton administration, but not just the Clinton administration. I mean, Tillis says, whose neck am I going to wring if the tariffs go wrong? We have Republicans fighting the tariffs, and the tariff is designed to bring back American industry. They're fighting against their own country. You see, the New York Stock Exchange doesn't care whether this country lives or dies. If you get rid of our industry and have cheap labor in China and Laos and Cambodia and all these places doing the work, our factory is gone because the labor is cheap. Their profit line climbs and climbs and climbs and climbs. And a very small number of people are making money because the profit line climbs and climbs and climbs. But eventually you're going to kill the United States because you won't have any manufacturing. And so, like I said earlier, Trump has stopped the bleeding. We've got to really, really, now the ship's been turned, get behind it and push this thing as hard as we can.
It sounds like the whole government who's run the past few decades has been run like a Ponzi scheme. I mean, it almost feels like a weird multi-level marketing scheme or something. I mean, it feels dirty. It's not right. And so many people are afraid to buck the system because they're afraid they'll lose their businesses. They'll lose their homes.
Well, when you say Ponzi scheme, you're on mark. I call it a criminal enterprise, but it is a Ponzi scheme. It's money laundering. They'll run money through their NGOs to accomplish their objectives. Mm-hmm. You think about going back to Doge. It's exposed all kinds of things that'll make you mad. Some sort of homosexual phone application for this country. Or, I've got nothing against Sesame Street. I don't think the government should be funding it. And especially not in Saudi Arabia. You've got, they're paying for condoms for Hamas fighters, mm-hmm. in Israel, against Israel. But the thing that makes me the angriest, Donna, is this. It is the fact that you have FEMA, which also should be defunded and taken out, spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to put illegal aliens in downtown Manhattan while my fellow veterans are dying on the street. It is absolutely infuriating. That's why I say we've got to wage a war against this deep state. We have to take these agencies out. And the way you take the deep state out and get it right down to the place where all we have is just basic services to the Constitution and Vision. The way you take it out is you take its money. You starve it. You starve a cancer by taking sugar. You starve the deep state by taking its money. And you take its money by eliminating the federal income tax. And that's the message I'm going to carry to Washington. Tillis isn't saying that. They're talking about
I got another one for you. This is Tom Tillis. I know this firsthand, okay? Okay, so I love the Cowboy Church, the American Fellowship of Cowboy Churches. These are the most real people. They are there within our own communities. And when something happens outside the communities, they get their chuck wagons and they take food. They do chuck wagon. They do barbecues. They do everything. They believe in feeding people. They're all about that. So Philip Gilliland, who is with the American Fellowship of Cowboy Churches, is one of my regular guests on the show. And so we've known each other for years. We were just like buds. And so he called me. He was in Tennessee about to cross over to go to Asheville to drop off food, gift cards, whatever people would just give them. And I'm telling you, they're a very giving church. And he was really upset. And I said, what are you upset about? And he said, the FEMA will not let us through. They wanted to confiscate their water, their food, their this and their that. So there's a sheriff, and I cannot remember this guy's name. He was a sheriff in Tennessee. And he's right there at the border, right when you walk in, go into North Carolina, to head into Asheville. I don't know what the sheriff did. I don't know what. But anyway, he gets a phone call and he says, bring your stuff over. It's fixed. So I don't know if he threatened them with guns or what. But anyway, they were able to bring the food over. So why could Tom Tillis not do something? I mean, this was a headache. Okay, people were bringing all kinds of food and all kinds of supplies from the state of Alabama to help you guys in North Carolina. And they didn't want it to go through. What was with that?
Well, I think the Biden administration set out to try and weaken Western North Carolina because 23 to 25 counties, 22 to 25 counties, I should say, have gone Republican for the last 70-some years. The Democrat governor at that time, Roy Cooper, could have called the North Carolina Air National Guard in with Chinook helicopters bringing generators and water, and so could Biden have done that. It was a deliberate assault, in my opinion, to starve out Western North Carolina, and Western North Carolina still has not fully recovered. I mean, there are still folks who are homeless who have run out of money, and I had a liberal friend the other day hit me on Facebook because I pointed out I was lampooning the Democrats for trying to pull this MS-13 guy out of Nicaragua. And she says, well, what about Trump not giving money to FEMA? And I write back and say, I'm glad Trump's not giving money to FEMA because it's a criminal organization. FEMA should be shut down and ended and take the money and put it on the national debt or get the money directed to people that need it. But we are dealing with a criminal enterprise and a criminal organization. And, Tillis, I don't know what influence he's had over FEMA, probably not too much one way or the other. But this goes to show a fundamental difference between how the Democrats operate in their philosophy versus a conservative philosophy of government. And they just build agencies, and these agencies simply get in the way. Just like the story you told of your friend with the Cowboy Church. FEMA trying to actually obstruct access to goods and services and life-saving materials to people that need it, all because they want to be the boss. And this is what the Democrats, they want to be the boss. They want to be in charge. They don't care what the effect is. I'm glad that sheriff got up there and somehow put the fear of God in him somehow. That's what it's going to take our local sheriffs to get involved more and more, I think.
Well, I asked Mr. Gillen, is this something I don't need to know? He said, I don't know. All I know is he said, you're on now, boys, go. Okay, let's go into a commercial break, and we'll be right back in just a few minutes.
Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you. At Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of DeKalb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant. At Liberty Bank, we're all about community, whether it's to help with a charity fundraiser or help families in need. Toys at Christmas or a local football team, we're here for you. You see, we realize the importance of family. Sometimes it's to build a new home or necessary home repairs. We're here for you. If you like the feel of a small town bank with all the conveniences of a big city bank, we're here to serve you. You will find us at any of our convenient locations in DeKalb, Marshall, Etowah, and Blount counties in North Alabama. You can call and speak with any of our friendly staff at 256-659-2175 or check us out on the web at libertybankal.com. And thank you for your support of our community. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender.
Because of your overwhelming support, our 1488 MyPillow has been one of the biggest sales in MyPillow history. I couldn't think of a better way to say thank you than to extend our wholesale pricing through Christmas. Get a classic standard MyPillow for only $14.88. Upgrade to a queen size, just $18.88. King size, only $1 more. Get my body pillows for only $29.88. And ready? Multi-use MyPillows, only $9.88. It's perfect time to stock up for Christmas gifts for everyone on your list. Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our wholesale pricing, including my classic standard MyPillows, only $14.88. But that's not all. I'm so confident you're going to love our classic MyPillows that I'm going to extend my 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2025. Plus, orders over $75 ship absolutely free.
The only place I buy my beef is Lone Tree Ranch in Collinsville, Alabama. Their cattle is born and raised on their ranch, grass and grain fed, and you can feel confident when you serve your family and friends because their beef is all natural and no antibiotics or hormones are added. You can buy whole beef or perhaps go in with family or friends and buy half. Their customer service is #1 as they take care of the delivery to their local processor and can deliver to your home for a small added fee. They also offer herd replacement heifers. I always call Lone Tree Ranch in Collinsville, Alabama for my beef specialty recipes and cookouts, and you can too. Food shortages are increasing, so buy local by calling 256-523-6462. That's 256-523-6462.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Thiesel. Welcome to the Don and Donna Show. It's always so good to be with Don Brown. Don is an author and a speaker, and he's an attorney and running for office. And so glad to see you do this. You got to. I'm glad you're stepping out. And I think you're going to be a rough opponent to beat. I mean, there's nobody going to beat you, Don. But I wanted to mention this. There's a whole new breed of people who are coming out and they're voting now. These are the people who said, "Well, I don't want to be part of the government. They're all a bunch of scum anyway." I'm talking about preppers, and I just interviewed one. And I'm going to tell you what, these guys are as smart as they can be. They know how to totally live off the land. They know what north, south, west, east is. I mean, they know the common sense approach to everything. These people came out in magical numbers and voted for Trump. And I don't think they're going to stop. They're looking for candidates like you, Don. So what does that say to you? Do you feel like I've got a whole new breed of people who have not voted in a long time?
Yeah, Donna, and I think you're right. I think a lot of folks like that, preppers, and so a lot of Christians too, they just never felt like their vote mattered, have come out in droves. And I think there are still a lot of those votes to be tapped from good, solid earth people who just, I think, got so mad with what the Democrats were doing that they came out in droves. You know, it's interesting when you look at trending patterns. Florida has gone red. And I'm going to tell you, North Carolina, the registration trend in North Carolina is moving red. And we think that by the end of the year, North Carolina's going to be a majority Republican. That's how rapidly the registration is moving. And, of course, a lot of those folks may be independents, but they are thinking they will vote Republican generally, vote conservative. But I think there is a whole, universe of good, solid, solid-the-earth folks that are ready to get involved. And these are really the folks that we're depending on to help save this country. And if anybody's out there who's hearing my voice and you haven't voted and you've been very frustrated by what the Democrats did, you're frustrated by all the DEI and trying to send little, men in the little girls' restrooms and put men and women's sports and all the junk they try to do by taking your taxes and shutting you up on Facebook and trying to prosecute good Americans simply because of the way they think. If you are frustrated with that, your vote counts and the votes of your friends and family counts. Don't let anybody talk you into believing that it doesn't, because we need you there. We need you to come to the polls.
Absolutely. Let's talk for a few minutes about the influx of immigrants, illegal immigrants who have come in. Before anybody says anything, my daughter-in-law is from Russia. Okay, but she's an American citizen, knows more about American history than most people walking around Americans know. And she loves this country. And she'll do whatever it is to fight for it. As much as my son fights, she's a warrior. I mean, she really is. So have we went too far? Is there any way to bring that out? I mean, we want people to come from other countries, but the right way.
Well, Donna, if the Constitution itself doesn't even, just like separation of church and state is not a Constitution. Just like the phrase co-equal branches of government is not a Constitution. And democracy is not in the Constitution. Now, Republican is, but democracy is not. The phrase immigration is not in the Constitution. The phrase that is used is naturalization. And the naturalization is what your daughter-in-law did, is the legal process that a foreign citizen becomes an American. It's a process. It is a legal legal process. And anything other than going through the legal process, that is a naturalization process, is illegal. And, I did a talk to a Convention of States group a couple of months ago and pointed out the problem. There has been the Democrats have pushed massive illegal immigration, especially through the 4 years of Biden, And as I pointed out, we lost more Americans from 1 year due to fentanyl, which comes in through immigration, illegal immigration, than 10 years of the Vietnam War. And but if you look back at the history of immigration, there have been 18, 19 or so immigration and naturalization acts, and around in the 1950s, I think it was 1953, somewhere in there, the United States immigration policy was a policy based upon the needs of the nation. So if you look, for example, at our Apollo moon shot, we built and beat the Russians to the moon in large part because of German rocket scientists who were not Nazis, but they were working, in the German army, and von Braun himself, the leader of them all, defected to the United States. But our immigration policy, we go out and we find those who help us the most. That changed in 1963 after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. The Democrats changed immigration to suppress the number of Europeans we were bringing in and increase the number of people we were bringing in from Middle East and Muslim countries and African countries. Mm-hmm. And the whole notion of legal immigration changed, not from a needs of the nation basis, but all other kinds of junk. So, yes, we got to shut down illegal immigration. The president has done that almost overnight, which shows it could have been done all along. We have to adjust our legal naturalization process so that we are looking primarily for other folks who, number one, are committed absolutely to the United States Constitution. You can't be committed to a philosophy that is against the Constitution. I don't know who you are in coming to this nation. And then they have the skill set that is going to benefit the nation the most. We need engineers. We need rocket scientists. We need people to do microchips. We need the best and the brightest of the world, and that's who we ought to be seeking through our immigration process. And of course, if you have a legitimate reason for asylum, and most are not, by the way, just like this MS-13 dude claims that he's afraid of being beaten and all this kind of stuff down in El Salvador. Most of it's BS, but if there's a legitimate need, you look at it. And in those cases, I think you look at protecting Christians first, Christians and Jewish people first, who are the most persecuted religions in other parts of the world. And I think we need to just totally restructure the way we're doing legal immigration.
I do too. You mentioned outer space. I got to ask you another question. Do you think Katy Perry really went to outer space? Now, I'm not talking about smoking weed. I'm talking about like literally in a.
Oh, that's a good question. I guess that's going to be one of those questions we're going to be asking for a long time. I haven't really made up my mind on that, but I want to study that. So next time we're on air, maybe I have a little bit more of an intelligent response. But it is rather funny to chuckle about. I guess Bezos is trying to get into the act too somehow. So that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I doubt it, though, to tell you the truth.
Okay, let's talk about the educational system, because we know it has failed our kids. It really has. Your kids, your grandkids, unless they're homeschooled or private school, Christian school, I would say. I think those kids are probably okay. Can it be overhauled?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because when you think about the educational system, you think about Trump now working very rapidly to defund the Department of Education. The Department of quote-unquote education, I call it. The Democrats have a way of naming something and calling something exactly the opposite of what it really is. The Affordable Care Act, actually the Astronomical Cost Act, or Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, which in reality was the Inflation on Steroids Act. Yeah. The Department of Education really is largely the Department of Indoctrination. And I've asked this question many times, what Department of Education bureaucrat ever taught anybody anything? And part of the biggest insidious result for the Department of Education has been these attempts to indoctrinate kids and water down math skills through these top-down standards. Yeah, I did a lot of speaking back when they were trying to push the Common Core through. So with Common Core, the Department of Education would go around to many school districts, and often millions and billions of dollars. The schools district would have to agree to take the money, but they would also have to then agree to implement the standards that had not yet been written. And a lot of this Common Core is being pushed by Bill Gates, the Gates Foundation. Go back to the corrupt relationship now between the deep state federal government giving money to these NGOs. It's like you said, I think in an earlier show, is like money laundering. But But they were doing the working group for Common Core, and the principal mathematician was a mathematician named Jim Milgram, who was a Stanford professor, the only college professor on the math side of the standards, and who had been involved in the Apollo moonshot. And when he saw how bad the math standards were in Common Core, he pulled out because it was going to bring the top level of mathematics in the United States down from calculus to pre-calculus. So therefore, most high schools would just have pre-calculus, which would set us yet another year behind these Asian countries. And Sandy Stotsky, the other professor, there were a lot of high school and middle school teachers. The only other professor from the University of Arkansas headed up the language arts program. She resigned also when she saw that we were throwing away Dickens and throwing away Shakespeare and throwing away the great English writers, British and American writers that are part of our Western heritage, and replacing it with political garbage. A lot of stuff they're forcing, they were putting into this reading standards were prurient sexual stuff, just garbage. And so this has been the damage that the Department of Education has caused and tried to cause. There is no role for the federal government to be involved in education, period. And education is like anything else. You know, Donna, you see me just before. I've got this cell phone here, and when my son was in Afghanistan and in Germany, I can pick up the phone and I can FaceTime him. We can see each other and talk. He's now back in the United States, thanks God. He's with the Army. But we could do that just for the cost of whatever I'm paying to keep my phone going. 30 years ago, my daddy would jump on me because when I was in college, I'd call and talk for 30 minutes, calling home and drive the cell phone bill up. But you see what's happened is bigger is worse, smaller is better. So when Ma Bell got busted up through antitrust, we got better options. The same is true philosophically with education as well. The big educational establishment, whether it's the NEA, and even and I'm in favor of public schools, but public schools to be smaller, to be better, they need to be smaller, they need to be more efficient, and they need competition from the private sector. Because, as Reagan said, the rising tide floats all boats. And the problem you have is with the NEA, and you saw that crazy lady the other day. She made her speech. She says, "We must win all things, win all things." Look, I saw this lady. She's crazy. And the NEA people, they're all laughing around. They must win all, whatever that means. But they're just dingbats. They would want to crush the monopoly. The NEA doesn't represent the good salt of the earth teachers that we love and cherish. They represent a monopolistic political organization that would want to crush all educational competition in the country. We need educational competition, just like we need competition with our cell phones. We want competitions when we go to buy a laptop. The more options I've got, the better the prices are. By the way, we want competition. One of the problems we've got in healthcare right now, you've got monopolies in healthcare in the States. You got Blue Cross in North Carolina, busted the heck up with antitrust. We have numerous options for our auto insurance. We can shop and price our premiums better, but you got to bust up these monopolies. The educational establishment, which has nothing to do with education itself, the political establishment overseeing education must be busted up, just like the Department of Education must go. And I'll finally leave one other thing on this topic. Congress ran the Department of Education down our throats the last year of the Carter administration before Reagan came in. This Republican Congress must end it. You can't just rely on DOGE. You can't just rely on the Trump administration. The 22nd Amendment gives us only 2 terms of elected president. President Trump's term is set to end in 2028. The Congress must end it legislatively here and now. We got to have a strong Republican, not a weak Congress, but a strong Congress. End it now so that the cancer doesn't come back.
Let's talk for a few minutes about women's rights. Now, I'm not talking about the bra burners from the 1960s. I'm talking about what's being taken away from women. I feel like women's rights have went backwards 100 years. Just in the time that Biden has been president of the United States. And what I'm talking about is men playing in women's sports. Those kinds of idiotic things have been happening the past couple of years. What are your thoughts? How can that be ended?
Yeah, the irony here is that the Democrat Party claims to be the party of women. And it's the Democrat Party policies, especially, with what you just described, forcing little girls to share restrooms and locker rooms with men. Forcing this transgender, whatever it is stuff on people. The Democrat Party has been pushing that, and it's been an attack against women. The Democrat Party, just like it was the party of Jim Crow, just like it's the party of the Ku Klux Klan, it has been the most anti-woman party in history. But like I said earlier, they will say one thing and do exactly the opposite. And I think a lot of people are seeing through it. I've heard of a young mother the other day who said that she wound up voting for Trump because she got a little baby daughter, a 3-year-old kid who, and it's not my daughter, somebody else, but who was concerned about her daughter growing up and having to face guys and boys and men in athletic competitions. And the thing that's so crazy about this, Donna, Democrats don't seem to learn their lesson. Whether it's drawing, a line in the sand to protect MS-13, protect illegals over Americans, or whether it's continuing to push this radical trans agenda. It's interesting, Donna, last year, when Biden still occupied the White House, he declared Easter Sunday to be National Transgender Appreciation Day. Just an in-your-face declaration against American Christians exceptionally. That's gone out the window, but they don't seem to learn their lesson. But I think that this is a real political Achilles heel for them. Only a very few Democrats, only a very few will come out and say it's wrong. Most of them will be crucified if they say it's wrong. And again, the irony is the Democrat Party, the so-called party of women, is the party that is most aggressive against attacking women and taking away women's rights to privacy, women's rights to compete in sports. They're anti-Title IX, one thing right down to the other. And I don't know where it comes to an end, except hopefully with the implosion of the Democrat Party as we know it.
There are so many ways you can look at this. Okay, so the rights of the mother, and I know you and I both mentioned this several times. What about the rights of the baby girl fetus that's being eliminated so the mother can have her rights so that she can, her own body is her own choice? What about the little girl she's aborted?
Well, they say, my body, my choice, except for when it comes to masking and vaccinations. Then it's everybody my choice. So they talk out of both ends of their mouth. Their message is 1,000% inconsistent. And you raise a great point. Half the little babies that are aborted would have been women and girls. And I have said that part of the problem with the whole abortion movement is it is legally illogical. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that Roe v. Wade, which created the so-called right to abortion, was on a constitutional collision course with itself, and finally was reversed. But if you think about it, though, Donna, the Constitution, both the Fifth and 14th Amendment, guarantee the right to life, liberty, and property, and say that no state or the United States can take life, liberty, or property without due process of law. We look at babies in the womb in the area of what we call intestate succession, in other words, inheritance. If a little baby is conceived on Monday and the father is killed on Tuesday, that baby from the moment of conception growing up has a legal right from the moment of conception to inherit. Okay, the same is true when you look in the law of personal injury. If there's an unfortunate wreck on the road and the mom carrying her child are both killed, that's a double homicide. Or if they're injured in the womb, that baby has a right, to life in that sphere, but not so in the abortion sphere. There is no articulated right. There is an articulated right to due process through the Constitution. The due process isn't applied to babies, and you can't take life without due process. And just any reason to take a life is not good enough. And so there has to be consistency. I'm not just 100% pro-life. I'm 1,000% pro-life. But I do think that the Democrats continue, attempt to push their radical abortion agenda is now falling largely on deaf ears, and more Americans are concerned about the very type of thing that you said. I mean, in other words, more moms and women are more concerned. Let me just rephrase. I believe about the very type of issues that you described. That is the Democrats' deliberate, assault on real life women and athletics and in the privacy of their homes and private restrooms than what the Democrats are trying to push with the radical abortion agenda they continue to try to push.
Well, let's just face it. I mean, if men are in some kind of a competition where they've got more power over women, I don't care who they are. It's just common sense. There are going to be no women remaining. It'll only be full of guys who act like they think they're girls. All
right, exactly. And what you have seen typically is you've seen these guys that are competing in sports and maybe they're mediocre and in the middle of the pack. They say, well, I can drop down and play and become a girl and I'll start winning. Just like with this swimmer that Riley Gaines is swimming against. His name slips me. But it's just something that they don't seem to be interested in backing off on, which is good for us politically because they get more and more numbskull in their thoughts as time goes on, it seems. But, I think that, I think a lot of women are seeing that a party that claims to protect women is really the party that is most aggressive in depriving women of rights and liberty and protection. And this whole transgender thing is been right at the forefront of it. Well,
I'm going to say, Phil and I went to Texas last year, a little wedding anniversary getaway. And it was really interesting. So we were going to the hotel to sign in. And so we get up. Now, from a distance, this looked like a really pretty girl. Okay, so when we first walked in the door, and just beautiful, breathtaking, beautiful. But I'm just got to tell you, Don, the closer we got to him, the more you could see it was a guy with the makeup on, the false eyelashes, all this kind of stuff. And you could actually see the 5 o'clock shadow going there. Needs to take more hormone pills or something so he doesn't have that. I'm just telling you, you can dress it up. And from a distance, it may look like a gal. But I'm just telling you, when you get close up, you can see it's really a guy. So that's how it is. Less than 2 minutes left in this. Well, about 2 minutes left in this segment. What would you like to tell folks? And I know folks want to donate to your campaign. How can folks do that?
Well, go to brownfornc.com. Brown, that's my last name, Brown, FORNC.com. You go there. There's a donate page. This race for the U.S. Senate in North Carolina is we the people versus they the establishment. Mm-hmm. They've got the money. They've got a desire to return to the status quo once Trump's gone. They're globalists. We're America first. And we can win this thing if we can get the money that we need to at least punch on an even scale. So brownfornc.com. Welcome anyone on board. You can write us there. Come on board with our campaign. We're going to need to continue to build what is a growing grassroots movement. And with your help, we can get it done.
You'll need some volunteers as well. So folks who would like to help with the campaign, they can go to the website and volunteer as well.
We can take donations and volunteers right there at the website. You'll see some of my position papers that we discuss, you and I, Donna, on this show over the months and years, and they remain consistent. They're not going to change. And but our nation still needs to be saved, and we got to look at this as a long-term battle to save the nation. We've been given an initial victory with President Trump's winning the White House, but it's up to us to take that gift and move forward with it.
It takes more. And I want to say this on personal. I would like to say Donna's a good friend of mine. And if you want a guy who's really going to fight for you, and that's what we're all looking for now, remember, we're turning things around. This is the guy you need to vote for. I'd be voting for you if I were there. You know that.
Thank you, Donna. I know you would. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for watching. You're the reason we do what we do, and I appreciate every email. I appreciate everything you do to keep this show going. 20 years, Don. It's 20 years, first of this month. Can't believe it. Can't believe it.
Thanks to you and to Phil both. I know y'all are a team, and Fox News Radio was the smartest thing you could do when they had the affiliation with your show, Donna. So I'm really, really proud of you and really grateful for you.
Well, I got to say, Phil he's the reason this thing rocks, because I couldn't do it without him. Just telling you. But thank you.
Together, you're both an inseparable team, and it's like peanut butter and jelly. One's got to have the other.
I like that, peanut butter and jelly. Yeah, it's one of my favorite sandwiches. Thank you, Don, for being with us. And guys, go to the page and donate. Do that right now while you're thinking about it. Don, thank you for being with me.